So, James, most listeners to The Front will know you as the Australian's media editor, but last time we talked about cricket broadcasting on The Front, it was also revealed you have a pretty solid Richie Benaud impression.
Yes, it was an overcast day in Melbourne, and the Victorians were sent into bat after losing the toss. They were in early trouble at about 2 for 30.
I believe you can tell a lot about a person by who they think is the voice of the summer. Who is that for you when it comes to the cricket?
Great question. And, if you'd asked any Australian 20 years ago, it would have been Richie. And alongside his, comrades, Tony, Bill, all the rest of the gang.
2 for 222.
Great shot. Oh, it's a biggie. Straight over the top. The little man has hit the big fella for 6.
Gone again. Oh, there she goes. That's a 12.
That light roller would have about as much of an effect as a couple of koala bears doing the pas de deux.
Calm off it, Bill. He's put his foot straight down the line. The ball swung down the line.
There it is. Great moment in the history of Australian Test cricket.
So it's been a marvellous game here.
But these days, in the last decade, cricket commentary has really evolved, and some of the technology used in some of these cricket broadcasts is phenomenal. And they can showcase all various things, right down to, and it's not just, nicks on the bat or ball tracking technology. It's whether or not the batsman, his body is in the right position to actually be playing a certain shot. It's crazy. So the technology's added a lot, and it's come a long way since Tony Gregg used to stick the key in the pitch to determine if there were, if there were cracks or if there was moisture in the wicket. These days, you've got the likes of Adam Gilchrist, Mark Waugh, both of those guys on Foxtel, alongside others. Seven's got Ricky Ponting, Matthew Hayden, Justin Langer. ABC Radio's got Darren Lehman, who's not only a former Test player but also former coach. So a lot of these former players of the later generation, after the Benauds and the Chappells and the Greggs and the Lauries, it's almost as if the next generation of former players are now at the forefront of commentary, and that's a pretty great thing because they have unparalleled insight into the game. To take nothing away from the commentators such as Jim Maxwell, who is on ABC Radio and has been fantastic for decades.
Howdy, howdy, everybody. Here we are. We're having a bit of fun, aren't we? Don't you love wickets falling in games of cricket? Keeps the game moving.
People might recall Shane Warne. A lot of people probably have forgotten since his death how great a commentator he was. He could see the game 2 steps ahead, more so than probably anyone I've ever heard. So not only was he, our greatest Test bowler, he was also probably one of our great commentators. But that's forgotten. So I think and given that the game has changed a lot since the 60s and 70s, it's great to have, I suppose, more modern commentators in a way calling the game.
We've also seen, as greats of the women's game have retired and moved into commentary, we've had Lisa Sthalekar, Isha Guha. We've even got, between games, the current women's Test captain, Alyssa Healy, jumping into the commentary box. Yeah. How do you think that's impacted the way people watch cricket?
Well, the women's game itself has just gone from strength to strength. It's amazing, and it's on all the time, like the Big Bash. The women's Big Bashes too seems to be always on, which is fantastic. Who doesn't love cricket every day of the year?
And I believe it was a couple of years ago, the men's Big Bash season was shortened because just the amount of cricket that they are playing at the moment. Yeah. But the women elected to keep that longer season. They are playing dozens of games every summer.
Are. And it's rating its socks off too, which is interesting. So there's a real appetite to watch the women's game. And with the women's game, the fact that there's so many female commentators is also brilliant for the game, both the men's and the women's. And I can remember it's a long time ago, back in the 80s, there was a woman, there was a lady called Kate Fitzpatrick who briefly had a role on the Channel 9 commentary team, and all hell broke loose. It was a different time. But, of course, there was all this predictable criticism that, what would a woman know about cricket, all the rest of it. That narrative is so far gone, thankfully, now. And we've got men and women commentating across men and women's games. And it's fantastic. And it's good for the listener and the watcher too.
What do you think it is about the cricket commentary that is unique? Obviously, you need people who can both entertain and bring those really deep insights that you mentioned, sometimes up to 5 days, unless it's England in the first Ashes test. What is it about the cricket commentary that makes it different from other sports?
Well, the key difference is you've got to fill in the gaps. I suppose, like any sport, you've got to be able to call the action, and people do it differently. People call the action differently. I mean, Richie had that beautiful, understated manner. And then there's someone like James Brayshaw on Channel 7 and Triple M, who's great, but he becomes hysterical at times, which is entertaining, but it's very far removed from cricket commentary of the past. But I think the one factor across all the commentators is that you need to be able to talk and talk and talk, because I think there's a statistic once that, there's about 80% of the game of a day's test cricket, nothing is happening. There is no live action. So that's 80% of 7 hours where you have to talk. And obviously everyone's been in the car and they've listened to ABC and Triple M, and even back in the day on Channel 9, Bill Laurie used to talk about the pigeons, and that sort of thing. And on ABC Radio, there's a lot of talk about birthday cakes and where the commentators had dinner the previous night. And it's actually very entertaining of itself, nothing to do with cricket a lot of the time. So it's entertainment. It's you have to entertain for 7 hours, and all these guys and girls that I've mentioned in the commentary positions, they know cricket inside out. Can they add that entertainment factor? Not all of them can, but the very good ones have to.
Sometimes I think it's what is not said as well that is equally powerful. We all saw Stuart Broad's face in the broadcast of the first Ashes test in November. It was just that look of pure, I would say, humiliation. He might not say that, or maybe regret for some of the comments that he'd made. The former player most recently added to some of the commentary teams has been David Warner. He only retired last summer. We all saw him walking off the ground at the SCG. How's he faring, and what do you think he brings to the mix?
The interesting thing, I suppose, about Dave Warner is, as you say, he's not even 12 months out of the game. So he is expected, obviously, to offer, at times, fairly harsh appraisals of players with whom 12 months ago he was sharing a dressing room. There was a moment in the Perth test, I think, where there was controversy surrounding Usman Khawaja and whether or not he should retain his place in the team. And Warner, who was a great mate of Khawaja's, indeed a childhood friend of Khawaja's, I thought handled it quite well. Was fairly diplomatic, but pointing out the challenges that Khawaja faces. So that's something that somebody like Warner, and even some of the other commentators who haven't been out of the game so long, have to traverse. It's only natural they don't want to dump on their mates publicly, but at the same time, they're paid, and paid well, to offer pretty strident analysis of what's going on. So that's a tricky thing for some commentators.
I thought it was interesting when Usman Khawaja was off the field and therefore not able to open the batting for Australia in the Perth test, that he actually told a story where he said, this has happened to me.
And in a way that goes to what we were saying before in terms of filling the space of a broadcast. Some of these ex-cricket players, and they've all got so many stories, even if it's O'Keefe talking about how he drank 12 beers with Rod Marsh on the eve of a test, or David Warner talking about some technicalities of the game, it fills the space because there are so many stories that accompany this game, and these ex-players, it's tailor-made for a few back in my day stories.
Someone we cannot have this conversation in this day and age without talking about. Someone who's become a bit of a cult hero online, and that's Kerry O'Keefe, also known as Skull.
Yes.
What do you make of the particular brand of chaos that Skull brings to the commentary?
Well, probably he was launched off the back of his unique laugh.
If I could talk technically, Jim, this pitch is drier than a teetotaler's Christmas.
And nobody laughs at Skull's jokes as much as Skull.
That's true. That's true. And there's a certain skill to that as well. He's a brilliant addition to any commentary team he's on. Obviously, he cut his teeth as a commentator with ABC going back quite some time, and now he's a real staple of Foxtel, a very important team member. I suppose he plays in a way the court jester role, but again, he's a former Test player of some note, and has brilliant insights into the game. I think the brilliance of him is that when he's doing a piece to camera or even offering commentary, you're never quite sure if there's going to be a really inappropriate gag or just a real zinger at the end of a sentence, or if it's just going to peter out into a fairly normal observation.
It's a special day because people come for it. It's a reunion day. And there's a buzz in the crowd prior to the first ball, and everybody watches the first session, and then they go drinking out the back. So keep the crowd shots tight for the second and third session.
Last time we talked about the cricket broadcasting in general, there was a big question mark over who would get the broadcast rights. That, as I understand it, is now locked in for the next few years.
Yep.
We've got Channel 7 has the free-to-air rights, Fox Sports is on streaming, and then ABC Grandstand has the radio broadcast rights. Is the cricket, and particularly the longer formats, which some people might argue are falling out of favour with viewers for something that's faster, more entertaining, like T20. Is it still attractive to broadcasters, given just the sheer volume of it and the sheer length of it that it requires?
Absolutely, Test cricket is valuable to broadcasters. Last season, when Australia played India in 5 tests out here, that did amazing numbers for TV and radio, and then certainly in the first test in Perth, even though it only lasted 2 days, I think it was up 60% on the India test the same time 12 months back. So those numbers are astonishing. It was unfortunate for the broadcasters, Seven and Foxtel, that it was only a 2-day test in Perth, because, I mean, they would have lost advertising revenue and eyeballs and momentum and all of that. But cricket is very valuable. The 3 big sports rights in Australia are AFL, NRL and cricket. Cricket's unique insofar as when India or England are in Australia, it's an absolute bonanza. They are the 2 biggest test-playing nations apart from Australia, and obviously they attract a lot of support, given, for a start, the number of Indian supporters out here, and same with England, and it's always competitive. So when those teams are out here in our summer, it's a goldmine for the broadcasters. When you've got teams that don't have as much support, let's say Pakistan, West Indies, South Africa, New Zealand, those summers by the broadcasters are considered down summers because they're just not in the same ballpark as an India-England series. So I suppose with the broadcast rights, it's never going to be gangbusters every single season. But increasingly, Australia's playing India more often, so that helps the coffers of the broadcasters and of Cricket Australia.